Hello, hello. So I want you to tell me this is something that resonates with you at all. So probably from the time I was about, I don't even know, maybe 16, a close friend and I, we had an emergency plan for how we were going to survive a worldwide zombie apocalypse. I mean, we had so many of the details down. We knew where we'd be, how we'd be communicating, how we'd the logistics, how we'd get to and from, how would we get food, water, any resource you can name. We had it all planned out. We knew how we were going to survive the zombie apocalypse, and not only that, we were going to be the warlords. We were going to rule everybody because we were going to do best. And to be fair, I mean, the plan wasn't terrible, wasn't the best, but we had some plan in place. And then a hurricane comes, knocks out power for a week or two, and you're left twiddling your thumbs because you did nothing to prepare for it. You have no power, and it stinks. We prepare for the zombie apocalypse, but we cannot do anything about a hurricane. Yeah. That's how a lot of emergency planning goes. I think it makes sense that a lot of us are that way by nature. And it does make sense to a degree. In the world of emergency preparedness management, the disasters or emergencies, crises that are low frequency but high hazard, those are the most dangerous ones because they're both very hazardous to us. They have a high potential for damage that can be catastrophic, and we don't have experience responding to them. Whereas something like a hurricane, a strong hurricane, or even a tornado, that is a high hazard event, but it's pretty common. So we've developed ways to deal with that. Zombie apocalypse, not so much. One of my favorites, solar storms, coronal mass ejections, CMEs. We don't really have much in place for that. That is a high hazard, low probability event. But that's all well and good to plan for those. But what do we do about the more mundane things? And admittedly, again, I'm the same way, but I think a lot of us like to ignore the more major, the more minor events because they're not as interesting. They're not as much fun. Well, like I said in the first or second video that I made on this channel, a lot of this stuff in the real world, when it actually comes down to it, is boring to a degree, at least for many of us. And there is a more boring aspect of emergency preparedness that we should be paying attention to. And it's not a flashy new AR. It's not 70-year supply of freeze-dried food. Those are great if you have those. I'm jealous, but that's not what we're talking about now. It's more the logistics. It's the planning. Do you know your environment? Do you know where you are? Do you know the things around you? Do you know the water supply? Do you know groundwater? Do you know basic things about your community, the demographics? Do you know the average age, the gender, the densities of the population, the elderly, the young? Do you know most of these things? Because they can give you an idea during a disaster of areas of impact. And you can also carry this over to the type of hazard you are dealing with, in that if you're dealing with a natural hazard, everybody might be impacted to a more consistent measure. Whereas if you're dealing with a human-caused hazard like political unrest, maybe you can actually extrapolate some of that information about the demographics into your plan. Now, I've heard a lot of people refer to this in the preparedness community as a area study, I believe is what a lot of people are calling it. It's very similar to a community profile is what we would call it in the emergency management world. Really what we're trying to do is get a good idea of the area that we're making a plan for. So again, on the bigger scale, we'd be doing this for states, for counties, and we would be bringing in this information for a large geographic region. Now, maybe for your needs, if you're doing it on a smaller scale for a small team, family, or a tight-knit neighborhood, you might or probably will not want to do it on that large of a scale. It's very time-consuming if you do it in depth to that degree, but there's a lot of principles we can carry over. And also, like I was saying before, we also want to consider if we're only dealing with human-caused hazards or if we want to include natural ones too. Because if we include natural ones in that area study, we're not just looking at the demographics like a lot of people like to do, and that's great, but we also want to look at things like geologic features and areas that are prone to flooding, 100-year floodplains. These things that are more likely to impact a greater proportion of us than Red Dawn happening in our backyard. Because while that could happen, it's not as likely. It's more fun to plan for, but it's less likely to happen. Online, there's many free resources where you can get this high quality information if you have the skills to extrapolate it in certain software. And maybe in future videos, we can go into that more. I can show you how you might do that. But even if you don't get deep into data and bringing it into what's called GIS software, you can actually find these tools for free if you just type in your state or your county and then public GIS information. It might take a minute to look at the interface and understand it, but you can get a lot of high quality information for free. If you want to look at demographics for your area study / community profile, you can go to census.gov in their data main section, and you can pull a lot of good information that's not going to cost you anything. And if you have an idea of where to start, it is fairly easy. I know I'm not going into very much detail here. Again, maybe in the future, I'll do a little series of how to do that, maybe how to make an area study or a community profile step by step, if you would find that helpful. And I can even potentially show you how to use open source GIS software. So in GIS software, by the way, that's if you've ever seen like fancy maps people make in plans, that's GIS. You're taking data that is geo-specific, and then you're putting it on a map so you're able to visualize your data better. So if you have a bunch of demographic information that's in a spreadsheet, you can view it on a map. It makes it much more user-friendly. But these are all really important things to include in an area study. Again, it's not very fun, it's not flashy, but it is what's going to be more helpful for a lot of people than, I don't know, you name your fancy new gun. I don't know what you got. Again, real life, not always the most interesting, but I'm trying to talk about things that are going to be overlooked by a lot of us out there. But I know this is a really short video and very broad view, very zoomed out. But again, I hope to go into this in more detail going forward. I just don't want to drown you right off the bat. Give you a few weeks maybe to acclimate. I don't know. But yeah, I hope you took something from this, and I hope going forward you will, if you don't already have information about an area study, you don't know where to start, how to do it, I hope you will come back and take a look if we go into that. But that's about it for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you.